How you doing, YouTube? It's Will from Will Development, and this is my 6th yearly update. Does that mean I've been doing this for 6 years now? I think so. Right? This is number 6, so it means I've done 1 year, 2 year, 1, 2, 3, 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year, yeah. 6 years I have been running this channel. Just about 5 years of doing stones. 6 years of, call it consistent, we call it training. What about it? Been pretty cool. And Smart Man would have rewatched last year's video to see what I had to say about everything back then. Never claimed to be a smart man, so here we are, just going in totally uninformed. But I do know that this time last year, in terms of training, strength, and confidence in my abilities, was much lower than it is today. This past year, I participated in 1, 2, 3 competitions, I believe. No, 2, because the Scorcher, then the one got canceled. No, yeah, because 3. Scorcher, Orlando's, and Iron Kill games. And I believe that's the most competitions I've ever done in a single year, which is good. I had planned on doing even more, unfortunately, due to the way things are. One of those competitions was canceled that I was planning on doing. 2 of them actually were canceled. One was simply postponed until next year, and I just rolled over my entry to that following year. And then the other one was just outright canceled, and I believe they're just going to roll our entries into next year's as well. That would be Miami's Baddest in April, and then the Orlando Europa, which was scheduled of this year, and that got postponed, so here we are. But it was good. I managed to not zero a single event at the very first, I guess I should say the second comp of this year. And when I describe year, I'm not talking about January till now, I'm talking about last mid-September till now, which I apologize. I am a couple weeks late on this video, but here we are. Then, so I participated in the Scorcher, got last place, and did zero one event, which was, it is what it is. Then, I participated in Orlando's, which is the first competition I didn't zero a single event. I still took last place in that comp. Which was, it is what it is. I went in that one apprehensive and did hold a little bit back, and part of that was I had planned on doing Miami's. It was almost like a month and a half away from that comp, so it was one of those things where this isn't the one I want to lay it all out there. I want to do that at Miami's, where I really just go for broke on everything, and if I end up getting injured, I end up getting injured. But I didn't want to do that at Orlando, so played things a little bit closer to the chest, so to speak, and definitely left some points on the table, no question. But it was super exciting because the first event was a pressing event. It was a natural stone press, and I didn't zero the press, which was the first time I've ever done that in quite a few comps I've done. Up to that point, I think that was like my 4th or 5th comp. Up to that point, I had zeroed every single press event in every competition except for that one. That was the first time I'd never done it. Or I hadn't done it, I should say. So that was a really good event. The Orlando's event. Went a little long, and they ended up skipping one of the events completely, which is fine. And, it doesn't... It bothered me a little bit, but it's not like that event. It was the car flip. It's not like I would have much ground in that anyway. But certain events like the Husfell load, I definitely held back, even though I didn't have to on that event. Just in preparation, and then also on the mace hold or the hammer hold. I definitely held back on that, and honestly, it's one of those, looking back, I probably shouldn't have, I didn't need to, but it was one of those, like, why am I killing myself? Save a little bit for the car. I've got a half a chance if I've got some energy. I've got zero chance, you know. So it is what it is. It was what it was. Still a really good comp. And then after that, the 2 comps I planned on competing in both got canceled. And then the Iron Kilt games showed up, and it was a Strongman Highlands game hybrid competition, and very well put on comp, even though we got rained out quite a bit. But I didn't zero a single event, and I actually think overall in the novice I took something like 6th or 5th, which, that was my fault. I honestly probably could have gotten 3rd if I had sort of thought a little bit better, but they had split novice into 2 separate groups, and I was in Group A and there was Group B, and it didn't occur to me at the time of doing certain events, like, oh yeah, you're competing against 5 other people that aren't standing right next to you. And on certain events, there was really nothing I could have done to do any better, things like the caber toss, and things like the stone put, and the weight over bar. I mean, that was just, the weight over bar I just zeroed. It was the one event I did zero that whole time. I thought we were doing a 20-something weight, and then literally as we're walking up, they're like, no, you're doing the 56-pounder. And I was like, perfect, great, grand, wonderful. And so that was just a 0, unfortunately. But then the strongman type events boosted me up so much that I was able to sort of dig myself out of zeroing that event and not doing as well at the stone put. I actually did pretty good on the caber. I think I finished with like a score of like an 11 o'clock or something like that, which, that being my best score, tied me with a couple other people for like 2nd or 3rd on that event, which was cool. Then we had the stone carry, which I got 2nd in my group 4, and I think I got 4th overall for that event. Then they moved over to the Dinny Stone hold, which I talked about this, I believe, in my comp, or at least my weekly update for that week. But I did really good on that event, and this is where I lost some points because it didn't even occur to me that there was other people. I set a time of like 1:13, and I probably could have held on for, honestly, probably another 20 seconds without any kind of trouble. I think the winning score was like 1:30, so I definitely could have won that event, but it didn't even occur to me because I was just like, oh yeah, 1:13 would be enough to beat everybody here. And everybody here was not everybody that was in novice, it was just my group, so excuse me, I've got a tickle in my throat. The mucus build up. Nice and lovely. But that's the whole point of competing, right? You learn things about the actual game that is competing, and then about yourself, and see where you should have put a little more effort in, and where you could have put a little more effort in, and then, you know, places where you probably could have maybe put a little less effort in, that sort of thing. But overall, in terms of competitions this year, was an awesome experience. I still have one more coming up for this fiscal, or I don't know, calendar year is the better word, yeah, or it's the proper word. For this calendar year, in a couple weeks, I have the Tampa Bay Strongman Classic, or Tampa Bay Strongest Man. I forget what the name is exactly, but it's Tampa Bay Strongest Man. And I've watched this event probably 5 or 6 years now, but I've never competed. And so I decided, yeah, I'll sign up and I'll do it this year. It should be fun. I like some of the events going in, and some of the events I'll probably lose some points on, let's just put it that way. But it should be a good show, and I am probably the strongest now, generally, than I've been possibly ever. One of the biggest issues I've been fighting for the last couple years has been some hip and back pain in my left side, and it was most notably happening during squats. I would squat and warm-ups would go okay, and I remember I went through a couple months there where I was like, alright, I'm good, and then I would put some actual good weight on there, something above 300, and it would just flare up, and it was like, damn, and everything suffered because of it. It's just, even though the pain wasn't there, I would still feel kind of almost pressure, and it was sort of always in the back of my head. And for the last, honestly, probably 4 months, give or take, I have not had any of the same symptoms. I've had some back strains and stuff like that, but it was a different pain. Sometimes the pain had gotten so bad to the point where it was just like I couldn't move. It was just any little movement hurt. And a lot of the times I would just sort of have to grit through it and just keep moving, because that's what you gotta do. I have a job, I have obligations, things to take care of around the house, that sort of thing. You have to take care of it. It is what it is. But every single part of my life was suffering from that. And I believe I have figured out the cause and come up with the solution for it. And I'll do a separate video all about it, but just to touch on the subject slightly, it was a lot to do with just how I was squatting. I was standing a lot wider than I probably should have, and it was putting a lot of strain on my hip that was shooting up into my back, and it was just not the proper form for my body. And it's just that simple. It might have given me more power, but it just wasn't working. And I spent a lot of time figuring out what was exactly doing it. It's like, alright, deadlifts never hurt my back, but squats always seem to. So what am I doing wrong? And so the fix was to just bring my feet in a little bit, bring my heels specifically in just a little bit more, but the challenge there was I had, and still do, have poor ankle flexibility. And so I had to work on that, and I'm still working on it. And right now, since deadlifts and squats aren't being contested at my next comp, I'm using that opportunity to do basically high bar ass to grass squats right now. I've made that decision last week that I would start doing that instead of just the standard low bars, and I would put a lot of volume into it and just work on that flexibility that I need, and then I'll go back to low bar and see what happens. But my foot stance is going to remain relatively close and relatively the same, and that's where we're at with it. And so far, no pain, and probably out of it, I'll get some better teardrops. That'd be kind of cool, since it's a more narrow stance, and it's going to make me better for it. That being said, while gyms were closed, I did pull a new deadlift PR of 435, and that was cool. That was 10 pounds over my old PR. Actually, it's 15, because the most I'd ever pulled was 420, which for my size is not that great. It should be higher. It should be mid-4s, should be like any day of the week almost, sort of thing. But because of the back pain, it was one of those things in the hip, And so did that during the gym shutdowns, got back in the gym, and then randomly one day everything was just feeling sort of right. And I actually pulled 455, which is my current PR, and it was awesome. It was great. It was definitely like a 9 RPE. I maybe had another 5 pounds in me, but there wasn't a lot more in me. And that's awesome. Overhead. I give myself a lot of grief for my overhead not being better, but honestly, every once in a while I get those memories that pop up on my Instagram and stuff, and I see where I used to be just 2 years ago or a year ago, and it's like, man, 2 years ago, I was happy to hit 135 for 5 overhead stripped. And the form was decent. It wasn't great, but it was decent. And then a year ago, it was like, all right, 135 for 5 is pretty standard at this point. Form is getting dialed in, but hitting 155 for 2 was like, all right, you're really pushing it, And I don't know what I could do right now, because I haven't been touching strictly overhead, I should say, just because the comp is a different, we're doing a incline log press, so that's what I've been training mostly for pressing. And then just dumbbells for overhead work. But I know before I started doing this, I could hit 155 for 5 strict. Basically, I did a week. So it's like, it's just slowly building up. And it just reminds me that that consistency is what's going to get me to where I want to be. And another big change I made this sort of year, and this is calendar year again, was squatting and deadlifting twice a week and pressing twice a week. Almost, actually, I press 3 times a week usually. And that gives sort of the ability to sort of rearrange the amount of volume I do per day. And it gives me the ability to sort of have a bad day, and I'm not so upset about it. It's if you're only squatting once a week, let's say you squat on Mondays, which is the day you should squat, then you have a bad day. Even if you rearrange everything that day to sort of make up for it and just sort of say, all right, it's a rough workout, I didn't skip it though, you have to wait till next Monday, 7 days until you do it again. And that's a long time between a bad session and potentially another bad session. Whereas when you're doing it twice, even 3 times a week, I can have a bad session on Monday. I can even have another bad session on Thursday. But then when I come in on the following Monday, it's going to be a good session. Or I can even try again on Saturday. And the same goes for the overhead, It gives you a lot more leeway in terms of just having bad days, because they're going to happen. And that's one of the biggest things from this year, too, that I think I've learned and come up with. I used to talk about my body weight and stuff because at one point that was important. I should say more important to me. And this year I've been averaging somewhere in the realm of about 206 to 207 pounds. I'd have to reference my charts to be sure, but I've got another video coming up for that. Should be a cool video. It'll be done in sometime in January, if you're still around to watch that one. I started tracking my weight every single morning and night and averaging all that. Excuse me. Averaging all that. And then I'm going to see what happened over a year. What was my trend month to month, that sort of thing. And I don't recommend that to everybody because some people get really discouraged when they see their weight sort of jump up for 3 pounds for no reason, seemingly no reason, right? And that can be very disheartening if your goal is weight loss. My goal was just stay around a healthier weight for me, which I believe is somewhere around 200. Honestly, I should probably be under 200, just to be a little more athletic, but I'm comfortable around 200. Anything under 210 and above 200, I'm very comfortable with. I feel like I can still move pretty well and things like that. So that was my purpose of starting to do that, and it should be a pretty cool video just to sort of give you an idea of how all that sort of looks, and we can, I'll deep dive into all the charts for every month and that sort of thing, and you'll see like, look here, I jumped up all this weight and all these sorts of things. And I put little notes on the side if something's really out of whack. I went to a wedding earlier this year, and my weight just shot right up, and I really didn't even eat that bad, but it just, you add alcohol, bunch of carbs I don't normally eat, my body just held on to everything, and it took a little bit for me to get all that off, and now I'm actually cutting slowly for the comp because I have to weigh in at 198.4, so I'm trying to maintain somewhere around 203 up until a couple weeks out, and then honestly my plan is to get to a maintenance weight of about 200, that way, for those 2 weeks, and then when I get there, basically I'll just not eat the night before or and not drink the morning of and just go weigh in, and I should feel pretty okay. That might not be the most optimal way to do things. At some point in my career, I'll probably end up finding somebody who can teach me how to do cuts and stuff like that a little bit, and are all ideas and all that stuff. But seeing I'm at the 20-minute mark, there's really not a hell of a lot more to say in terms of this year. I mean, how do you condense a whole year into a 20-minute video? It's not really possible. But if you stuck around this long, I thank you for watching. I don't know if I had the intro done yet or not, the new intro. We'll see how motivated I was. Rip a few videos off YouTube, my own YouTube, and sort of come up with a new thing. I'll probably stick with the same music because I tend to like that music. Plus, it's never going to get copyright strikes, so, you know, that's always nice. A non-monetized channel, and they still give me copyright strikes. There's a number of my videos I've realized just aren't there anymore. Some of my weekly updates and things like that, and they're just gone. And it was because of music copyright strikes. And it's just like, okay, but I'm not monetized, so who cares? And I guess the argument could be made, well, the artist isn't getting paid for it either then, or something. I don't know. But it sucks, because it's like gone. I have no way to get them back. I just have I got nothing. So, I didn't take them down. I never take down my videos. If anything, I just redo them with new information that I have, new perspective and things like that. I don't believe in deleting stuff or pretending like I never said a certain thing, because if I say something that's just blatantly stupid and wrong, and somebody calls me out or I call myself out on it, I think I should also be given the opportunity to give the correct information and not pretend like I've always known the right thing. That's, to me, dishonest, and you know, if I can touch on culture in our society a little bit, people are doing a lot of that now, and I don't think that's the right move. Pretending like somebody didn't say something wrong and then change their opinion, I think that's wrong. I think we should be accepting growth, and that's one of the biggest parts of fitness in general, right? And it's about growth, and I think that's my message for this year. You know, the staircase doesn't go straight up, it kind of plateaus and then goes up again and plateaus, and even sometimes it goes down a little bit. And that's okay, as long as you just keep getting back in there and keep giving it your best. Not every session you're going to be able to do that, but I mean, that's just reality. Those people are like, oh, every session you should be blah, blah, blah. Look, that's not reality. That's not how it's going to be. You're going to have some really shitty sessions sometimes, and you're just going to have to change the plan for the day and go from there. Sometimes even the week. It's just, it is what it is, you know? And there's nothing wrong with that. The important thing, and I'd say the number one thing that I want to relay from this whole year, is consistency. Even the whole time I was in extreme pain sometimes. I mean, I had pain so bad one time. I was working on one of my vehicles and got up, and the second I stood up, I just fell back down and proceeded to vomit because the pain was so bad. My body was literally just like, no. And I laid there on the concrete for about 5 minutes before I finally got the courage to sort of move again, and I said, okay, I can get up now. So it got bad at some points. It was really bad. But I never stopped lifting. I never stopped moving. And I think because of that, you know, maybe the better path would have been stop certain lifts and figure out what's wrong. But, you know, I guess I'm stubborn like that, and it's all working out for the better, so I'm still going to preach consistency above everything. In my opinion, and a few other smarter people than me's opinion, than a few other people that are smarter than me, have a similar opinion that pain doesn't necessarily mean you stop, because movement is going to fix a lot of problems, and consistency is going to beat anything. It's always going to win. Even poor programming consistently is going to be better than good programming done in a spotty fashion. You know, if you go in and only train once a week, but it's the perfect program, the person who's in there every day, even on a bad program, is probably going to beat that other person. That's just how it is. It might not be in a week, a month, it might be over time, but, you know, it's a habit that I plan on keeping forever. I don't plan on ever stopping training in some capacity. I may have to slow down the type and the veracity of my training in certain aspects, but I don't ever plan on stopping training in some regard and being strong. I want to be one of those 60, 70-year-old men, that you see that are still out there digging trenches and installing wells in people's houses, Jack LaLanne types. I want to be that. I might not be a strong man then, but I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to stay as consistent as possible throughout anything that comes up. So that's it for this year. I apologize for the long video, but I guess I had a lot to say. And consistency. It's cliche, consistency is key, but it's true. If you want to win and you want to get better, you have to be consistent. And there's just no two ways about it. So if you're not consistent, then what's your excuse?